Welcome to engine removal 2010 F350 with the 5.4 second gen Super Duty. It's going to apply to 2008 to 2010 5.4 liter engine removals. I've already gone ahead and drained the oil and the coolant. Coolant petcocks right here. So now I'm gonna go ahead and first remove the radiator, power steering, cooler, condenser, and there's a transcooler in there. I'm gonna get all that out of the way, and this bracket. I'm gonna try to do all this without disconnecting the AC. I actually don't have any refrigerant in the system right now anyway, but just in case, I just want to see if it's possible, and so we'll see about that. Otherwise I'd have to go get it drained. So first remove these 13 millimeters here, here, and here. Same on the other side. And then we're going to remove the 10 millimeters here, here, here. And there's these are holding the radiator on. Do this bolt here and here, and then we're going to move it aside. So the transcooler lines come from back here. One of them goes here. The other, it attaches at the bottom, ends up going into the cooler. So that's what the condenser looks like, and I think you could get the engine out, but since I don't have any refrigerant, I'm gonna get it out of the way. Get this lower radiator hose. There's a clip, comes out and it slides off. Get the fan out, the throttle body assembly, some of these hoses, these vacuum lines. Undone all the engine harness. Wiring harness connections up here by the fuel injectors and the coil plugs, and also unplug the cam position sensors and the VCT solenoid. And the radio interference things, and then there's the oil pressure sensor and the crankshaft position sensor here. This is a lot easier to get off now that the fan and the radiator and all that are out of the way. So I've removed the alternator, 10mm bolts here and here, and there's a 13mm bolt under that cover. This connector. Throttle body has this connector, and the way it works is slide this red tab up and press on this tab underneath, and then slide it off, and then with this one, put it up, slide that tab up, and then press on this tab and slide it off. And that's for throttle body. I'm taking the belt off, but right now I take the power steering pump off. Mine, I think it might be missing a bolt on this one, but it's got 3 bolts left. Got 1, 2, and then a third one. And then up here, just leave the fuel rail in. You need a fuel rail disconnect tool, and that looks like, so this is push the door in, slide it off, and be prepared for a little bit of fuel to trickle out. That way you can take the fuel rail out with the intake manifold, and you don't have to undo these bolts here, which have a possibility to break off. These bolts break off from the intake manifold, and it's a pain. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bolts holding on the intake manifold, and then there's a brake vacuum line behind there. So this is the vacuum line that goes into the back of the intake manifold. These are just pushed onto some studs, and that's the only stuff behind the manifold that you have to reach around and mess with. So now that the intake's manifold's out, I'm going to get the engine harness out of the way by disconnecting these, and the oxygen sensors and the ground, various ground straps. Also make sure to disconnect your transmission fluid dipstick right here, and transmission harness bracket from the head. Okay, so the deal with the starter is, so you've got 3 half-inch bolts holding the starter on. Got the ground strap going to the engine, so you remove that while you're down here. And so undo these, and then undo the 3 bolts, and just take the starter right out. Alright, so starter's gone, ground strap's disconnected. Next thing I'm gonna do is these exhaust nuts at the exhaust manifold at the flange, and I was kind of hoping to avoid it, but I might disconnect the 2 drive shafts, so that I can slide the transmission backwards. Once the transmission and engine are separated, it can be kind of nice to slide the transmission backwards so the flex plate can come away from the transmission, and then you can just lift straight up and out. Okay, now that both sides of the exhaust are done, both drive shafts, and the first thing you gotta do is chalk the wheels. Use a 12.12 millimeter socket or wrench, and these usually have some sort of Loctite, so a little heat will help loosen them up. So with those out of the way, we're gonna come up to where the transmission meets the engine and remove this inspection cover. The flex plate bolts, and as you can see, there's one right there. You need to line it up with the inspection hole. So I'll take you to the front of the engine with an 18 millimeter socket and a breaker bar. We're gonna turn the engine, and we should be able to just make out back there what we're trying to see, and that is whether we have any bolts coming through the. So now we have a bolt right in the middle of the inspection cover. Go remove it. So you just do that for all of them. I think there's 6. So the only remaining things left to do is to disconnect the transmission and the motor mounts. And before we do that, we have to take the hood off, which, if you're working alone, is probably one of the hardest parts. So, and I'm gonna disconnect these struts. There's a clip that slides off, then you just pull it off. I'm gonna prop it up with a broom, take the struts off, lower it, then I can undo the bolts on each side, these 13 millimeters, and then I can get in there and shoulder it out. So my sequence of events is going to be to disconnect these 4 transmission nuts, one, and the one down in there next to this oxygen sensor plug sitting there, and then there's 2 on this side. That one down there that it doesn't want to focus on. So I'll remove those top 4 ones, and then hook up the engine crane with the saddle right there, and then after that I'll do the engine mount nuts and the rest of the transmission bolts. I'm doing it way out on the half-ton setting. And what we need is an 8 millimeter 1.25 thread in the front, and a, I think 10 millimeter, let me go see, 10 millimeter 1.5 thread for the back. Okay, there's just 3 more bolts. Transmission bolt there, there, and there. Okay, transmission is bolt free. And now I'm gonna slide the transmission back. It's all the way back. And now it's totally clear. So this won't